Welcome into One of One Sports. Today we have our last installment of our NBA draft position breakdowns. We did point guards, we did shooting guards, we did the forwards, and now we have centers. So as always, we're breaking down the top collegiate prospects, no internationals, at the center position for the 2025 NBA draft. And before we get into it, if you like this type of content, make sure to support the channel, leave a like, and subscribe. So now getting into it with our shortest episode yet with just 7 players I'm breaking down today. There are some other centers in this draft from the international side that will add depth to this class, but these are really the only 7 collegiate prospects. There's maybe one more from Penn State, but I don't have a scouting report on him. So yeah, just 7 today. And we start off with the runner-up to Cooper Flagg for the Wooden Award. That is the best player in college basketball, Johni Broome, standing at 6'9" out of Auburn. And I think when you're looking at the strengths of him, what jumps off is the production. He's an 18-point double-double guy. There's a reason he almost won the Player of the Year. He was really good rebounder, as I put here as the next thing, and then he's just really strong, which helps with the rebounding, but also helps with some of his post defense ability. Now the downside, he's not athletic really at all. I mean, the foot speed's not there, and the explosiveness, like people are making fun of his vertical online. But it is a problem when he doesn't have the longest wingspan, which is part of the frame issue, and he's only standing about 6'9". So you're undersized for the position with below average length and below average explosiveness. So you're really providing no rim protection whatsoever, and you're not a good switchable defender. So you're a complete defensive liability at the next level, in my opinion. And even if you're a good rebounder and a strong player who can, maybe score a little bit on the inside, I just don't see the value of a player like Johni Broome. Definitely not a first round worthy pick, in my opinion. Look, he had a great college career, but he's also an older prospect, I think 23. And yeah, I mean, you made your money in college from NIL. You had a great collegiate career. And if a team takes a pick on him in the second round, maybe he works out. He showed a tremendous work ethic. But right now, he would be pretty low on my personal big board, unfortunately. Then we have Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton at 6. This guy's 7'1", really, really tall player. And that leads to him being a really good rim protector just because of the size, length that he does possess at 7'1", really good shot blocker. And it also makes him a really good lob threat, rolling off pick and rolls. He just can get to places a lot of players can't get if you throw it high enough, and he can finish around the basket. He also has really good touch. He's got little push shots, hook shots, and he has a little bit of shooting ability that he's flashed. Potential to maybe hit some pick and pop threes at the next level. He doesn't shoot them super often, but he has shot them a little bit. And it's a decent form with a decent, I don't have his percentage right in front of me, but I think it was okay. It wasn't nothing great. He more like to keep him inside. But he's shown flashes of having some 3-and-D potential from the center position, which does make him intriguing. But foot speed wise, if you switch on to him, he's going to get blown by, and he doesn't have the recovery speed even for having tremendous length. He's also not the strongest player on the skinny side and not a great rebounder despite being 7'1". And then the age is also a concern here. He's also 22 or 23. So, you probably is what he is. I would think he's maybe, because this is a weaker draft class in terms of depth, I could see him going late first round, early second. Just because there is some intrigue when you are this height. Can you come off the bench and maybe do somewhat of what Luke Cornett does for the Boston Celtics? You're going to hustle, you can contest some shots, and you maybe even add a little bit of a jump shot. That could make him an interesting piece at the next level. Getting into the top 5, we have Thomas Sorber, who I would say is maybe the most likely player that I'm underrating just because I haven't got to watch a ton of him. He got injured this year at Georgetown, and most of the games I saw Georgetown play were after he was already out. So I've watched some of the highlights and obviously read other scouting reports, saw what he did at the combine. And I see some of what people are saying, but I don't see enough to move him any higher than this. Maybe that's due to a lack of watching him actually play at Georgetown, or maybe I'm just have a differing opinion on him. But yeah, this is one I'm a little bit concerned that might be too low on. His strengths, he's really good at rim protection. He had, I think, the longest wingspan of anyone in this class. It was 7'6", even though he's only about 6'9". But weird shoulders because he's 7'6", but his standing reach isn't that good. So it's a little confusing there. But he has tremendous defensive potential. He gets a lot of blocks, a lot of steals, really high block rate, a good steal rate for a center as well. So he shows tremendous defensive upside for a prospect, even if his weakness is perimeter defense, but you kind of expect that from a center. The only issue with him is that if you're 6'9", you would maybe want him to be a bit more switchable, which I don't really see. But when you have the block rate he does, that's a little less concerning. And then offensive ability, it's really limited. He could catch some lobs, he can get some putbacks, but really nothing outside of that. I have questions about, can he be a good shooter, because he only shot, I think, 16% from three. And yeah, was not a good 3-point shooter, but he shot in the 70s, I believe, from free throws and has a nice mid range for him. So I could see some shooting potential there that, if that develops, would make me raise him higher on my board. And then I have injury concerns because he got a foot injury and missed, I think, over half the year at Georgetown. And whenever you have these bigger players getting lower body injuries, that does concern me at least a little bit. Overall, I think the defensive upside is intriguing enough. Maybe you could compare him to somewhat of a Robert Williams as like a molded player, where you're a bit undersized, but the length, athleticism makes you a really good rim protector. You become a great lob threat, and maybe even a bit more shooting capability with Thomas Sorber. So I definitely see the upside, but right now the injury concerns, maybe not a trust in that jump shot, and maybe not believe that he's going to be the highest end of rim protectors, limit him to just 5 for me, but still a very good prospect and worthy of a first round pick, in my opinion. Next at number 4, I have Max Raynaud out of Stanford, and this is a much like, he's nearly 7'1". He's a really big guy, but he has great mobility for his size, by far the best mobility of anyone we've talked about, and he possesses the best shooting ability of anyone we talked about, shooting 34% from threes on pretty good volume. He also has a nice mid range, and yeah, his mobility comes with being able to handle the ball, get by guys. Really good offensive skill set, and really drove the full Stanford offense, different than like Kalkbrenner or Thomas Sorber were more defensive anchors. Janai Broome played more like he was one of the leading scorers, but he wasn't the system. Max Raynaud existed as like the driving engine of Stanford's offense, which does make him really intriguing, because we've seen guys like, obviously at the highest level you have like Nikola Jokic being an offensive engine, but even guys like Alperen Sengun or Domantas Sabonis. We've seen these type of players who can be offensive engines at the 5 spot and have great success. You see a little bit of that from Max Raynaud. Weaknesses: he is a defensive liability. The foot speed isn't there, and he's not really a great rim protector, despite being nearly 7'1". And when he's in shoes, he's over 7'1". And you did see like his shot blocking percentages increase throughout the year, so maybe there's room to grow there, because he talked about how he hadn't really been taught shot blocking technique, and he was starting to learn that. So you would hope that improves, because then he becomes much less of a defensive liability. Right now, if you don't have rim protection or perimeter defense, that's a concern. And then he's also not the strongest guy, and I'm not really thinking he's going to fill out much more, as he is, I think, another 22 or 23-year-old prospect. But sometimes he gets bumped off his spots or gets bullied like in the post, and that leads to he only has a 46% field goal percentage. Part of that is struggling to play through the physicality. And like I said, it also sometimes hinders him guarding opposing centers. And you would project that to be even worse against some of the bigger guys in the NBA. So the main concerns are all about defense for Max Raynaud, at least in my opinion. The questions I have for him are about his playmaking ability, because in college he had a negative assist to turnover ratio, but there were these flashes of really good court vision, of great passing ability. And it's something that you would be intrigued to see, like, if a team really focused on him being this offensive hub, what could he do playmaking for others? Because right now he has great scoring potential. He can space the floor. Maybe he could grow as a shot blocker, but if he has this playmaking ability, it makes him such a more intriguing prospect and such a higher ceiling. And there are flashes of it for sure, but not enough production to be certain that he has that, but enough for me to be bumping him up my ranking ahead of a guy like Thomas Sorber. And then the room for growth is because, yeah, he's a 22 or 23-year-old senior prospect. So even though I think the shot blocking could get better, I think the playmaking could get better, there's a chance that, like, he's been developing for 4 years. This is kind of what he is. So that's the concern there, because this is a player I see the flashes where he could be even better and be like a borderline lottery prospect on my board. But when you're 22 or 23 years old, it's hard for me to justify really believing you're going to improve in these areas. But either way, he comes in as the 4th best prospect, just because a tremendous offensive potential and floor spacing ability, which is really valuable at the center position. And yeah, Max Raynaud, number 4. Getting into the top 3, a somewhat similar prospect, in Danny Wolf out of Michigan. He comes in at 6'11", and his strengths are also on the offensive side of the ball, having great passing and playmaking ability. He's truly, for Michigan, was like a point setter, and he has a great handle as well. And it wasn't like, like Jokic is a point center, but really like Jamal Murray brings the ball up and stuff. Like Danny Wolf would just run the full offense, dribbling around. It was really crazy to see. He would dribble like between the legs, step backs. He'd run the pick and roll with other players, like inverted pick and rolls. He was one of my favorite players to watch in college basketball because I really never seen a player like him, possessing the handle and playmaking at his size, and that makes him just such a fun prospect. But the weaknesses here, much like Max right now, are on the defensive side of the ball, as he lacks athleticism, which makes he doesn't have good foot speed. He can be blown by, and he's not a rim protector. Doesn't have great explosiveness off the floor, which, as we mentioned with Janai Broome and Max Reyna, this makes you a big defensive liability. You got to have one. Like if you can't switch on to other players and you're not good blocking shots at the basket, it's going to be hard for you to be stay on the floor in the NBA because you're such a defensive liability. My questions are, for his shooting ability at Michigan, he made a lot of threes. But for me, at least, I don't have the numbers to back this up. If you know, let me know in the comments. It seemed to me he was better as an off the dribble shot creator, like creating shots for himself, than a catch and shoot guy, which I don't know that teams are gonna want to let him do that at the NBA. And then at Michigan, he played more power forward along with another 7-footer, Vlad Golden. And that really maximized him getting those pick and rolls and playmaking for the others. So it'd be interesting to see, is he more of like a really tall power forward who can play alongside another big? I could see that being more of an ideal scenario for him. And if that center was, like, say he went to the Spurs, right? Victor Wembanyama or the Thunder, and he's playing the 4, and Chet or Victor Wembanyama at the 5. They make up, like, one can play make for the other and the other can block shots at the rim to cover for the defensive liability. There's something there that intrigues me about that sort of fit to maximize Danny Wolf's talent, because there's no doubt that he possesses one of the more unique skill sets in this draft class. He comes in at number 3. At number 2, we continue on with this trend of offensive-minded centers. We have Derek Queen, who's sort of similar to all the centers we talked about. He's the same size as Thomas Sorber, a little undersized at 6'9". He has the offensive hub abilities of a Max Reynaud and has a little bit of the handle and playmaking of Danny Wolf, though not quite to the level Wolf has it. At Maryland, he was the focus of the offense. He showed great touch around the basket. He's also really strong, finished through contact, could create shots for himself, and could play make for others. And like I said, he has the handle to even, get by guys at times. The weaknesses are, like for Danny Wolf, like for Max Reynaud, he doesn't have good foot speed, and he's undersized with not elite athleticism without rim protection. So take what I said for Max Reynaud, take what I said for Danny Wolf, translate it over. It's the same issues for Derek Queen. You have the offensive tools, but what are the defensive capabilities and how much reliability is that going to be? So my questions for him are, is it possible for his offense to outweigh his defense? And basically, just like, if you can't defend at the NBA, it's going to take a great amount of offense to make up for that. I'm not sure he has that type of offensive gifts. And then, like for Danny Wolf, I have a question about the shot, because the form is good. He was a good free throw shooter, but there was very low volume and he didn't shoot a high percentage. But he's a young guy, and for that reason, like Danny Wolf, older prospect, Max Reynaud, older prospect, Derek Queen has like some of the similar strengths and issues, but being just a freshman, I have more confidence in him being able to grow and develop, get rid of some of those weaknesses, maximize some of those strengths more, just as the nature of being a younger guy who's had less time to develop in college basketball. And for those reasons, he comes in at number 2 ahead of them. If the ages were mixed up, I could see this order going any which way, as they have a lot of the same qualities in their games. And at number 1, we end the trend with Kaman Maluwak, who is definitely not an offensive-minded center. Coming at 7'1", he is just a giant, and his strengths are all over the rim protection. He doesn't have the highest shot blocking rate or shot blocking statistics. Part of that is Cooper Flagg taking away some of the shot blocking, and part of that is just the intimidation of him being there. Like, you see this guy, and that's not someone you think, oh, I'm going to challenge him at the basket. Insane wingspan, insane height. And he's going to be a great rim protector at the next level, in my opinion. And also, like we talked about Ryan Kalkbrenner, being this size and he's probably more athletic than Ryan Kalkbrenner. He makes himself a great lob threat with a huge catch radius. And if he's playing off, he liked playing off Cooper Flagg as a playmaking four, throwing it up for him. And also, if he has a playmaking point guard on pick and rolls, I would imagine that would do really, really well, even though that's not something Duke love to do. For his weaknesses, he's super raw. He's only been playing basketball for like 4 years, and he's already become this elite prospect. That's kind of a weakness in terms of you see flashes or you see parts of his game where it's like, oh, that's not developed. Like sometimes the footwork isn't there. Sometimes the body control, like I mentioned, below this is another weakness where he puts the ball in certain spots, where he is positionally. I think there's just times where you see he needs to develop more. But part of the upside with that is, oh, this guy's only been playing 4 years and has already grown so much. How much more could he grow? And that's why he could have elite upside potentially. And then the shot development, like I said, he's a good, or I haven't said this yet actually, but he shot 72% on free throws, and seems to have good form, good touch. If he adds a 3-point shot to his game, which I'm not ruling out, that makes him maybe a top 5 prospect in this class, maybe top 4, because I just think having a defensive anchor and lob threat is exactly what you want from the center position in today's NBA. And if you add a 3-point shot to that, he's really the ideal center at the next level. So I really like Kamon Maluak. I think he just has so much, what would the word, so much, he's such a safe prospect defensively. Whereas the other guys we talked about, despite having more offensive tools, the defensive liability weigh them down for me in a way that Kamon Maluak just doesn't, because I don't need my center to necessarily be super offensively gifted, yet he still combines that with being raw, having the upside to get better offensively, and overall makes him the clear-cut number 1 center prospect in this year's draft class, at least in my opinion. If you guys disagree, you can leave it down in the comments below. Maybe you like Derek Queen or Danny Wolf. Make sure to let me know. Again, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. Next week, or actually maybe later this week, we'll be releasing the final NBA draft big board for the channel, as well as a final mock draft, all before the NBA draft happens towards the end of the month. Until next time.